What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers, and welcome to the main event deep dive for UFC Vegas 45. We have Derek Lewis going against Chris Daukaus. This fight should be an absolute banger for as long as it lasts. Two heavyweights that hit very, very hard going at it. I am here with Uncle Weezy, as always, on a Monday. Uncle Weezy, what is up? You looking forward to this card and this fight?
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. Like I said on Stat Tickers last night, that we have to enjoy this card. There's no more UFC for like a month, and we have to savor every minute of it, every droplet of blood that falls, every droplet of sweat. This is going to be the last one for a month. So like it or lump it, we got to get at it. We got to enjoy this card, and it's a fantastic main event. Who doesn't love Derek Lewis? Such a fun fighter. And then you got a guy like Daukaus, who has just been mowing people down on his road through the UFC thus far, taking a big step up in competition this week. So it's a fascinating fight to break down. Can't wait to chop it up with you.
For sure, it should be fun. Yeah, the fan favorite in Derek Lewis and the up-and-comer in Daukaus starting to gain a lot of hype, and rightfully so. This guy is just coming in, like you said, knocking out guys left and right. So I do want to shout out the chat before we get started. If you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. My full card breakdown prediction video will be out sometime tomorrow, and then I'll be going live on Friday as well. So make sure you are subscribed to not miss out on that. Let's see what we got in the chat here. We have Jeremiah. First one here. What is up, Jeremiah? We here, baby. What is up, Jeremiah? Jack Attack in the chat saying oi. Bon Kwee, what's good, y'all? What is good, Bon Kwee? War Dog saying oi. Chris saying oi. Paul saying oi. Unk. Jeffrey saying oi. And Alex, the General. What is up, General? And John saying Lewis by sub. We'll talk about the odds on that. What is up, Crusader? So yeah, we'll break it down, guys. We'll go through it, talk about the striking, the grappling, the tail of the tape, the experience, the finish stats, the strength of schedule, all that good stuff. And then we'll talk throughout the chat, see who you guys like, and then also see if we can find a way to make some money on this fight. So yeah, I say we get right into it. So we have the tail of the tape here. Derek Lewis, Chris Daukaus. Derek Lewis is 36 years old, 6'3", with a 79-inch reach. Chris Daukaus, 32 years old, 6'3", with a 76-inch reach. So Daukaus is going to be 4 years younger, same height, and then Daukaus is going to be at a 3-inch reach disadvantage. We'll take a look at their last few fights. Derek Lewis is 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A decision win against Blagoy Ivanov, a decision win against Ilir Latifi, a knockout win against Alexei Oleinik, a knockout win against Curtis Blades, and then a knockout loss to Cyril Gahn. As far as Chris Daukaus, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. Made his debut against Parker Porter, a knockout win there in the first round. Rodrigo Nascimento knockout in the first round. Alexei Oleinik knockout in the first round. And then Shamil Abrakimov a knockout in the second round. So as you can see, 5 wins in a row for Daukaus, all coming by knockout. This guy has a lot of power, and so does Derek Lewis. So yeah, should be a very fun fight here, Weezy. I say we dig right into the experience stats.
Absolutely. Obviously, Derek Lewis being the all-time leader in the UFC in knockouts, he's got way more experience than Chris Daukaus. Almost 20 more fights at the professional level and about 225 more minutes of professional cage time. So Derek Lewis has been doing this for about almost 4 years longer as a pro than Chris Daukaus has. Both of these guys get in and out of the cage pretty quickly. We see that in 15 fights, Chris Daukaus has only amassed 71.5 minutes of cage time. So his average fight time is less than a round at 4.77 minutes. And it's 8.75 minutes for Lewis. And as we know, Lewis has been involved in 5-round fights. So, fights that were scheduled to go 5 rounds. But he's been into the 4th round at least once, I think. So, Derek Lewis spends a little more time in the cage. But in terms of the UFC experience here, 22 fights for Derek Lewis, 4 for Chris Daukaus. So Lewis is 16-6 in the UFC. Daukaus still undefeated in the UFC at 4-0. But over 200 more minutes in the UFC cage for Derek Lewis. And we see Chris Daukaus in those 4 fights. Man, oh man, 3.38 minutes average fight time. So yeah, the last 5 wins by Chris Daukaus, all inside the distance by knockout. There's a trend there. And then the last 3 fights for Derek Lewis, either won or lost inside the distance by knockout. These guys get the job done by knockout. And let's look at the stats. Daukaus, 92% finish rate by knockout. Derek Lewis, 80% finish rate by knockout. And when we look at that, that's he's got 21 of 25 wins, Derek Lewis does inside the distance. And for Daukaus, it's 11 of 12. So 21 plus 11 is 32 of 37 fights, have finished inside the distance in these guys' combined wins. So they're both, really, really, really good finishers. And then in addition to that, they do tend to get finished when they do lose, as in the 11 combined losses, we got 9 of them finishing inside the distance. So you could see why the fight doesn't go to decision line is so juiced right now.
Yep, for sure. Like you said, both of these guys are finishers. We talk about the finish rates a little bit, and we see that Derek Lewis, when he's winning inside the distance an 84% finish rate. Chris Daukaus 91%, and like you mentioned, Lewis has been finished in 6 of his 8 losses, 5 by knockout, 1 by sub, and then Daukaus has been finished in all of his losses, 2 by knockout and 1 by submission as well. And yeah, we talked about the experience a little bit. Obviously, Derek Lewis has fought, the better competition. He has more fights, a lot more fights. And I do think that's important here. But I think something interesting about this fight is, the transformation of Chris Daukaus. We take a look, and I went through and watched Chris Daukaus' entire career today, every single fight I could. And you just go back and look at some of these fights, and there's a lot of things you do not like to see out of Chris Daukaus. Like he got out of the first round in one fight I saw, and he was very, very tired, huffing and puffing. Ended up getting submitted in that fight by Americana. And then there was another fight where he got out of the first round. I believe it was his 6 fights ago. Forget who the guy was, but he was eating a ton of hard shots, and you just don't like to see that. And that was back in 2019, so not too long ago for Daukaus. But, he was a full-time police officer. He has since then quit his job as a full-time police officer to focus fully on MMA. And as we can see, his body has definitely changed a lot. He looks like he's in much better shape. So I do think we're going to continue to see improvements from the Chris Daukaus side. So, going back and looking at some of these fights of Chris Daukaus, like back in 2015 when he did lose by Americana, when he is getting taken down very easily, or against Annie Inoue by knockout back in 2019 in January, February, where he got into the second round and got knocked out. I think we're seeing a brand new Chris Daukaus here. And since, that knockout loss back in 2019, he is on a 5-fight knockout streak and looking a lot better. So, yeah, interesting note there. But Uncle Weezy, what do you think about the transformation of Chris Daukaus? Like I said, going back and looking at some of his previous fights, he's getting taken down, he's gassing out, and when he gets past the first round, we saw in the Shamil fight, and when he got into the second round, he looked pretty good, right?
Yeah, he did. And you know what? One of the things that we've seen in terms of the transformation is not only the better physique, the better gas tank, but he's not wrestling nearly as much. It seems like he's kind of found out where his pocket is as a mixed martial artist, and that's standing in the pocket, using those fast hands of his, and knocking people out. And that's what we've seen when we look at the grappling stats. We see Daukaus has attempted 0 takedowns in 4 fights. And he's only had 1 attempted against him. So, he's getting put in the ring, with people that aren't really necessarily trying to take him down either. And he's just beating these guys to the punch. So, when you are gassing out, we always talk about how exhausting a wrestling heavy game plan is. And I think that Chris was trying to maybe use that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that he has. But I think he realizes now that that's so taxing on the gas tank, that, he might as well just use his hands, and he can keep that in his back pocket. And maybe we see him debut that grappling here in this fight, because, Derek Lewis is notorious for having really bad takedown defense. So, maybe he won't want to stand in front of Derek Lewis and trade with him. And he might have that option. That could be a new wrinkle that we see, that, as we have seen in the past when you do watch the regional scene footage. Because if you want to see Chris Daukaus, the grappler and the wrestler, you have to go before the UFC days.
Yeah, I did see a lot of that. Something interesting to note about Chris Daukaus, he has 0 submissions on his record. I know it says there's 1 submission, but it was like a tap to punches. And then you go back through his amateur career, he has like 0 submissions outside of that. It was like a submission by punches against Jeff Blockchi back in 2015, 2014. So I don't know like how legit that black belt is, or if it's going to work against Lewis here. And you talk about the wrestling. The wrestling looks okay, but man, he was getting out wrestled by some very questionable competition. But again, we do see that Derek Lewis has a poor takedown defense, so that could be something to mention there. But I don't know if a Daukaus will have success. But yeah, I'm curious to see the striking stats, because on paper here, it just looks like everything lines up for Chris Daukaus.
Yeah, I mean, both of these guys are power punchers. We got Lewis landing a knockdown on 1.3% of the significant strikes that he lands. We got Daukaus landing a knockdown on 4.92% of the significant strikes that he lands. So Chris has got 6 knockdowns in 4 fights, and Derek Lewis has 7 knockdowns in 22 fights. So both of these guys, are absolutely, knocking people out. And then we look in Derek Lewis's 16 UFC wins, 12 wins by knockout. That's really impressive. The other 4 by decision. So he can get, he has went the distance 4 times and won. So this guy does have, he's able to go the distance. It's something we haven't seen from Daukaus yet. But, when we look at the Daukaus striking numbers, they're video game numbers. I'm kind of struggling to think of anybody that's got this big of a ratio that lands this much, especially as a heavyweight, to be landing a knockdown on 5% of the significant strikes that you land, to be averaging 6.66 knockdowns per 15 minutes, to be landing 9.03 significant strikes a minute. And only absorbing 3.4. So, not only are you throwing 16.94 significant strike attempts per minute, but your opponents are throwing almost half that. So you're out voluming them, you're out landing them, you're out power shotting them. And then when you look at the striking defense, you see 64% striking defense, and that's almost entirely on the feet. Actually, Daukaus has never even been taken down, so it's entirely on the feet. We're talking about a 64% striking defense at range. So he's very good defensively as well. So yeah, everything about the striking numbers just shows a fast hands, power puncher in Chris Daukaus going up against a very slow, very lumbering, very low output guy who also has an absolute shit ton of power. So, but you look at the comparison of a 64% striking defense for Chris Daukaus, then look across at Lewis, 41% striking defense. Lewis has been knocked down twice in 22 fights, so the guy's not exactly getting the shit kicked out of him, but the striking defense is not good. And we all know that he's prone to potentially shitting his pants if you land a good body shot on him. So that's another reason to maybe stay away. But Lewis does land just a little bit more than he absorbs. But yeah, power advantage Daukaus, defense advantage Daukaus, output advantage Daukaus, ratio advantage Daukaus. So yeah, it's looking really good for Daukaus. But obviously, the one thing that Chris Daukaus doesn't have is 12 career UFC knockouts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you said though, everything is lining up for Daukaus. He's going to be the guy with more volume. He's going to be the faster fighter. He's going to have a ton of power. Lewis, very, very hittable. Lewis, doesn't do a ton, and seeing those numbers kind of shocked me for Lewis. I would think that Lewis would absorb more than he's giving out, but no, he's actually landing more than he's giving, or receiving, which is very impressive to me. But I guess the one question I have for Chris Daukaus is, how is he going to attack this fight? Because you take a look at Chris Daukaus's record, and he's only won one fight that has went over the 1.5 round mark. So is he going to come out here and try to, get Lewis out of there, or is he going to try to take his time, like say Cyril Gahn did, say how a lot of these guys, go against Lewis, like to kind of take their time, stay on the outside, don't, try to engage with them too much. Or is he going to, rush after Derek Lewis and try to get him out of there, like he has been against, Parker Porter went out there, got him out early. Nascimento got him out there in like less than a minute. Oleinik as well. So curious to see how he does attack this fight. I listened to an interview with Daukaus, and he said that he's not going to let Derek Lewis dictate the pace. And what I think that means is, Derek Lewis's pace is kind of just like one punch every couple minutes, that kind of pace. So I kind of think with him saying that, he's going to maybe put on a nice pace against Derek Lewis. He's going to use that volume of his. But again, we have not seen him. We've seen him win one fight that went past the 1.5 round mark, and I went back and watched that decision, and it was very, very close. He clearly wins the first round. He gets taken down in the second round and loses all 5 minutes that second round. And then the third round was very, very close. He's tired. He ends up on bottom at the end. Could have really went either way. But I have not liked what I've seen of Daukaus when he does get extended. But again, it looks like he is taking this more serious. Looks like he is in better shape. So you got to imagine that he is going to look better as the fight does get extended, but we haven't seen that yet. So that's what I'm kind of struggling with here, Weezy. If this fight gets extended, how is Daukaus going to look?
Yeah, and we don't have the answer to that question, do we? Because at the UFC level, we are seeing a different Chris Daukaus. We're seeing Chris Daukaus that's spending about 82% of his fights at striking range, not on the cage, not on the canvas. But Derek Lewis has been spending about 42% of his fights against the cage and on the ground. And I think that's because he's so dangerous when he is in the center of that cage. But yeah, if you're right about what Daukaus said, the way that I would interpret that, if Daukaus said that he wasn't going to let Derek Lewis dictate the pace, is that he's going to pressure this dude and throw a ton of volume because I think he thinks he can knock him out. And why wouldn't he think that? He's knocked out all 4 of his opponents thus far and done it looking really, really good. And the most recent one against Shamil was a really good one. I mean, he knocked him out not once but twice. He's looking very good. He's meeting all the tests, and each one of those wins is aging just a little bit better too. The Nascimento and Parker Porter wins in particular are aging really well. So this is a great fight, and it's going to end soon. But I don't like Daukaus's chances if this goes over 1.5, because we've seen Derek Lewis pull wins out of his ass late in fights a number of different times. And, we just don't have the information. The information that we do have about how Chris looks after 7.5 minutes is not great. But we also have to talk about those adjustments that he's making, the better conditioning, the fact that he's a full-time fighter now instead of a full-time cop. It does look like, Daukaus will probably want to get this done quickly.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking as well. But if he does that, he's really going to have to mind his P's and Q's because it only takes one shot from Lewis. But I do definitely think Daukaus is the better striker here by far. But as we know, sometimes it doesn't matter against Derek Lewis. But yeah, back to Derek Lewis. He has, won multiple decisions against Ilir Latifi, although I thought, he probably lost that fight. I had a bet on Derek Lewis that night. Latifi was able to control him for the majority of that fight. He still won it, only landing 20 strikes, which is crazy. But he won a decision there. He won a decision against Blagoy Ivanov. He was able to knock out Volkov late in the third round. So he can carry this power, has a decision over Francis Ngannou in a fight where they didn't do anything. And he won that fight with only landing 20 strikes. He has a third round knockout against Marcin Tybura. So he's able to, take his power into the later rounds where I'm not sure Daukaus can yet. Maybe he can. We have not seen it yet. A fourth round knockout against Shamil Abdurakhimov, a decision win against Roy Nelson, a knockout win in the third round against Pesta. So yeah, lots of late finishes here for Derek Lewis. So if this does get extended, Daukaus is going to have to mind his P's and Q's this entire fight up until it does get finished one way or another.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think one of the reasons that Derek Lewis has been extended so many times, in particular that Abdurakhimov fight, is because of the wrestling, because he's been taken down 35 times in his UFC career in 22 fights. He's got 55% takedown defense, and he's spent about 28% of his UFC career, on the canvas being controlled. So when we look at 215 minutes and look at, 28%, that's like 60 minutes, maybe 58, 58 minutes on 35 takedowns. So this guy is not only getting taken down, when he does get taken down, he can get back up, but he will spend a lot of time there. Because one thing that Derek Lewis doesn't do is blow his whole gas tank. He's very mindful of the fact that he has a limited gas tank, and he kind of paces his output accordingly. And that's why he can, that's why I think Daukaus is saying, I'm not gonna fight it at his pace, because he made the mistake of fighting at Shamil Abdurahimov's pace. And I mean Daukaus. First 3 minutes of that fight was actually kind of hairy for Daukaus because he wasn't in Shamil's face engaging him as much as he should have been. Shamil slows fights down the same way that Derek Lewis does. And Shamil, while he's much faster and smoother with his boxing, it's going to be Lewis who does his best work when he's coming forward. So I think if Daukaus really does control the pace of this fight and move forward and keep it standing, he'll have a lot of success with his hands. He'll throw more volume. He's been more powerful thus far in terms of just landing knockdowns on his opponents, but obviously it's Lewis who's fighting the better competition. But yeah, so I think the reason that we've seen Lewis go for long periods of time is because his opponents have been grappling him. I mean, Ilir Latifi, Roy Nelson. I mean, remember that Roy Nelson fight, dude? Roy, I think, shot like 29 takedowns in that fight, dude. He refused to stand in front of Derek Lewis, So, I don't think Chris Daukaus is going to do that at all. I really don't. I mean, still 0 takedown attempts in the UFC. And I think if he pressures Lewis and keeps him on his back foot, that's where he'll be the most dangerous here.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I'm trying to think back. I watched, like I said, I watched about all I could of Daukaus. I think the last time we have seen him go to that wrestling, I want to say was maybe in the Jeff Block Lee fight back in 2016. Other than that, I don't think he's used his wrestling a ton since then. So yeah, it looks like he has been striking, and why not? I mean, he's going to have an advantage over most guys with his speed, with his power. But yeah, we'll talk about these grappling stats though. I think if somebody's going to have an advantage, it is going to be Chris Daukaus. I don't know if he's going to try to. It's been kind of interesting that he has not tried to attempt even one takedown thus far in the UFC. But if he wants to take down Derek Lewis, there's a good chance that he probably can do it, considering Derek Lewis's takedown defense is pretty poor.
Yeah, agreed. But I'm kind of the mind that if Chris Daukaus is shooting a takedown, it means he's in trouble. I really think he's going to do the work with the hands. We haven't seen it yet, and I mean, I guess you're not going to wrestle Parker Porter that much. You're not going to wrestle Rodrigo Nascimento for sure. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And you don't voluntarily go to the ground with Alexei Oleinik, and even Shamil, Shamil does some really nice work on top. He's not any of those last three guys in terms of volume but he can control fights. You watch Shamil's regional scene footage and he could take guys down and hold them there, but he's not, a gifted submission grappler at all, really. So yeah, this is, I don't see this fight taking place in the grappling realm at all. But if Chris wants to try, he could. But the thing about Chris is he's not big enough to hold Derek Lewis down. I don't even think he's big enough to submit him, just because Derek, like I say, he'll just relax there, relax, and then just get up. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter if you're 300 pounds. When he wants to stand up, he'll just use that energy. He'll explode. And he'll stand right up. I've seen him do it so many times. He's been taken down 35 times. He's gotten up a lot of those. So, I mean, he's really hard to hold down. And I think it would be a waste of energy for Chris to do so.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think wasted energy is a good point here because, as we know, wrestling is exhausting, and wrestling a big guy like Derek Lewis is going to be exhausting as well. So I'm with you. I think this does primarily play outstanding. And at that point, I definitely see Chris Daukaus winning the minutes. Do you think Lewis could potentially win minutes here on the feet? I mean, he has in the past, believe it or not. There's like a handful of fights where he is winning minutes on the feet, like off the top of my head. Blago Ivanov, he was winning minutes against him. He was winning minutes against Ilir Latifi. So, it could happen, but I just really think the volume of Daukaus is going to be the difference.
Yeah, well, Blago Ivanov might be the only guy who throws less volume than Derek Lewis. I mean, like he's just as Blago has got that kind of power too, where if he hits you, you're just in absolute trouble. And Derek's kind of the same way, but no, I don't see him winning minutes here. Because Chris throws 16.94 significant strike attempts per minute, and Derek Lewis throws 5. When you look at that kind of volume And even though Chris is throwing 17 and Derek Lewis is throwing 5, Chris is actually more accurate than Derek, 53% compared to 50%, more powerful than Derek. And, a 41% striking defense for Derek Lewis, while we got a 64% striking defense for Chris Daukaus. No, I don't see him winning any minutes on the feet. I could see him winning a moment on the feet that could change the complete direction of the fight and leave Daukaus looking up at the light wondering what happened. But can he, like if this were a 3-round fight, and somebody was like, I'm on Derek Lewis by decision, I'd be like, no, man, no, don't do it. He will win moments. And that's what Derek Lewis does very well, is that in these decision wins, he's having guys just try to wrestle. And then, and Blagoy Ivanov, I mean, that guy got stabbed in the heart and lived. And not only lived, he came back and kept fighting trained killers in a cage as a professional mixed martial artist. So nobody's knocking out Blagoy Ivanov, So he won minutes there. That was one place where he did it. But, Ivanov is the polar opposite of a fighter like Daukaus when we talk about volume, pressure, and just the ability to be able to drown your opponent in speed and volume. So yeah, I really think Daukaus will be the minute winner on the feet here. I think Lewis is, he's looking for that one big shot.
Yeah, for sure. And, Daukaus is a really unique fighter at the heavyweight division. You take a look through Lewis's career, and there aren't a ton of guys that really resemble a guy like Daukaus, somebody that's going to have, great cardio, great volume. I guess you could say, a guy like JDS could resemble, Daukaus a little bit. Somebody like Volkov. Volkov has really good volume as well, good cardio. So guys like that. And Lewis has not had great success against them outside of Lewis landing that bomb at the end against Volkov, but he was getting destroyed up until then. Volkov outlanded him 121 to 39, and I can definitely see a scenario like that where Daukaus just has like a huge advantage in terms of the numbers.
And I think he's going to work Derek's body, and I think that's going to be the real big difference here because. If he mixes up his targets, he throws so much volume. If he mixes up and he starts landing to the body early, I think that's where, you're going to see Derek either, potentially shit his pants. And I mean, like people think I'm kidding about that, but it's almost happened like 4 times. Go back and watch the tape on this guy. He's eating too much barbecue, and sometimes you get mud butt and I mean, it could happen in there especially when you're getting punched by a 250-pound boxer, in the gut. It's not a good way to spend an evening, So I think he's going to work that body here. I think that's going to be key. If you work the body early, it's hard to see Lewis coming back from that and then getting one of those late wins. But yeah, pressure, pace, volume, body work, I think will be the key to Daukaus winning this one on the feet.
Yep, I like I said, I do think he will be winning minutes for sure. One thing I did not like about Daukaus in the past, it looks like he shirted up a little bit within his first couple fights in the UFC, but he has shown to be hittable at times and kind of be a little reckless at times. I hope he doesn't come in here with that game plan, but as of late, he has been looking a lot better. So we'll talk about the experience or the strength of schedule a little bit. Obviously, Derek Lewis has fought guys like Daniel Cormier. He's fought guys like Ngannou, guys like that. Whereas Daukaus, he's fighting, Parker Porter, Nascimento, Oleinik, Shamil, which I think that's a really good win. But Shamil was coming off of a long layoff, multiple injuries. And he's now, I think, like 40 years old, but still a good win there. But this will be a really big test for Daukaus here.
Big time. And you would expect to see a big strength of schedule advantage here for Derek Lewis, but it's just a testament to how impressive Chris Daukaus has been thus far in the UFC. Chris Daukaus' opponents have actually had a better win-loss ratio on the aggregate than Derek Lewis's opponents, which is, it's wild, right? But Derek Lewis's opponents obviously more experienced at 10.55 total fights compared to 6.75. So the average Daukaus opponent has a record of 4.5 wins, 2.25 losses for a 2 ratio. And Derek Lewis's average opponent, 6.55 wins, 4 losses for a 1.64 ratio. And when we look at who these guys are beating, they're both beating guys with winning records. It's the same overall as it is for the wins for Daukaus because he hasn't lost yet. And the average guy that Derek Lewis is beating, 5.81 wins, 3.69 losses. So the average guy that Derek Lewis beats only has about 1.31 more wins than the guy that Daukaus beats. So, even though I would still kind of give the strength of schedule advantage here to Lewis because he's fighting the more experienced opponents, and he's fought a lot of guys that don't have as good of a win-loss ratio because they've been in the UFC for so long and fighting the higher level of competition. But I think a lot of people are under the impression that Chris Daukaus just crushed some cans and some guys at the end of their career, and now he's going to fight Derek Lewis, and it's going to be different. But Daukaus has been matriculating through these lower levels of the UFC and really getting some tough opponents along the way. So this is Derek Lewis in strength of schedule, but on the metrics, it actually looks a little bit closer than what it probably is. But if we look at the advanced stats here, Brady, and let's just kind of go and look at the wins for Derek Lewis and the losses for Derek Lewis here. So wins going back to the very beginning for Lewis, which was 2014, over Jack May, Guto Inocenc, Juan Potts, Victor Pesta, Damian Grabowski. So the first 5 fights that Derek Lewis wins, the combined opponents' records are 2-14 in the UFC. But then he takes the necessary step up. He goes to Gabriel Gonzaga, 12-10, beats him. Roy Nelson, 9-10, beats him. Shamil, 5-4, beats him. Travis Brown, 9-7, beats him. Marcin Tybura, 9-6, beats him. Francis Ngannou, he wins a staring contest, 11-2. Volkov, 8-3. And then Blagoy, 2-3. Ilir, 8-6. Oleinik, 8-7. Curtis Blades, 10-3. So if you throw out the Nelson fight and the Blagoy Ivanov fight, where they both have losing records, but it doesn't matter if they're both incredibly tough, well-tested heavyweights at the top of the division. This guy has had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 straight wins. Well, they're not straight wins. There are some losses mixed in there against really high-level competition. It's for our guy Daukaus, it's about 2 guys. It's the Oleinik win and it's the most recent win, because the Nascimento win and Porter win could, they're aging well and they can continue to age well, because Nascimento is pretty damn good and he's got a black belt, and Parker Porter's a well-tested veteran who's taken out some of the lower members of the weight class. So that's why I'm saying that Derek Lewis does have the better strength of schedule. I mean, you look at those names like Nelson, Gonzaga, Abdurakhimov, Brown, Tybura, Ngannou, Volkov, Ivanov, Oleinik, Blades. It's really the highest level of division. But 2 of these guys, Daukaus is beaten as well. So and really even more impressively in some cases. So the strength of schedule definitely in favor of Derek Lewis here, but Chris Daukaus has not been crushing cans thus far.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. What always scares me about Derek Lewis, though, is I was very confident in Curtis. I think I pick against Derek Lewis like all the time. I did pick him against Latifi and Ivanov, but I picked against him against Curtis Blades. I was very confident there. I had Volkov against him very confidently. Obviously, I had Ngannou against him as well. It just seems like whenever I pick against Lewis, he seems to be proving me wrong, more often than not. But we look through the numbers, we look through it all, and you can see why I am very confident in Chris Daukaus here. But you can only be so confident against a guy like Derek Lewis. That's the scary thing.
Such high variance fights. Derek Lewis's power is fight changing when it lands, and that's the thing about these fights. You can. Women's mixed martial arts, I'm beginning to learn that lesson, that it's sometimes it just, it just doesn't work out the way you think it will. And the heavyweights, you don't want to be laying, big juice against a power puncher. And you're not laying big juice here with Chris Daukaus, because it's a fairly close line. But when you got a power puncher on the other side, and all it takes is one, you don't want to be caught laying juice too often. And Derek Lewis is the kind of guy, man, you bet against him at your own risk, because you've seen him do it 12 damn times in the heavyweight division. 12 times he's just sleeping dudes. And then he gets down on all fours and he does that baller ass move, the Black Beast, you know. And there, that's him eating up your money when you bet against him, you know. So, like you said, dude, I'm going to echo those sentiments. Always bet against Derek Lewis at your own risk. I like Daukaus quite a bit here too, but you know, I can't get too deep into that pool because Derek can sleep you with one punch.
Yep, for sure. Lewis is somebody that can be looking awful up until he lands that big shot. So everybody in the chat, let me know, how are you guys betting this fight, and who do you guys have? You guys liking a prop? Are you liking a money line here? Me and Weezy about to talk through it here. So we'll take a look at the line here. Chris Daukaus opened up -160. He is now -139. Derek Lewis opened up +140, and he's currently +119. I'm really curious to see where this line goes. I thought initially that, you know, a lot of money would come in on Daukaus, but I do see some people out there on the Lewis side, and there are reasons to like him. But I personally do like Daukaus quite a bit. Any thoughts on the money line? Do you think it's about accurate? Do you think it should be, you know, longer, shorter? Me personally, I think it's about right.
I think it's about right. I think there's still kind of some value here on Daukaus, considering how good he's been. You know, recency bias, we always have to pay a tax on fighters that are hot, you know. And, you know, we've seen Derek lose recently, but we haven't seen that happen to Chris recently. So you'd think that there might be a little more recency bias in this line. You know, at -140, you know, you're looking at somewhere around a 58, 59% implied probability if my math is right in my head. So it's not like you're going out there and saying, yeah, this dude's going to smash this dude 8 out of 10 times. It's not like you're laying, you know, -300 or -400 like you do to get a really good fighter like Justin Tafa this weekend. So, you know, yeah, I actually think there's some value on Daukaus here. And the way that you got to bet this fight, you guys, is just bet whoever you like inside the distance. You can get a little bit more of a bump. You know, if you like Derek Lewis at +120, why not like him at, you know, at Derek Lewis by knockout at like +150? It should be +120. You know what I'm saying? This is a 5-round fight. You know, like I say, if this one goes the distance, dude, it's going to be like Kimbo Slice versus Dada 3000.
Yeah, I could see that. But the thing about Chris Daukaus is I don't think he has it in him to really take it slow. Like, I went back and watched a lot of his fights. I had not seen a fight out of him where he kind of just stands and looks at his opponent. Will it be like that with Derek Lewis? I'm not sure, but it seems like in all of his fights, he's very aggressive. And I think that trend does continue. Like I said, hearing that interview, I think he is going to try to push the pace on Lewis. So yeah, I'd be really shocked if this fight saw the scorecards. But let's take a look at some more props here. With the over-under looks like it is set on some books at 2.5, some books at 1.5. The over 1.5 rounds -140, under 1.5 rounds +110. The over 2.5 rounds +120. The under 2.5 rounds set at -150. The fight goes to decision +300. The fight doesn't go to decision is -400. I have a feeling this is going to get extended somewhat, like maybe, you know, late second round, third round. So I kind of see like maybe the over 1.5, but that's not my style. I typically don't like laying juice on heavyweight overs in fights that are, you know, could very well finish in the first round. But what are your thoughts on the over unders? Do you think this goes longer in the fight? Do you think it ends in the first round? What are you thinking here?
I think the under is a fantastic bet. You know, betting the fight doesn't go to decision. If you're the type of person that likes to parlay bets, it's always great to finish with a super wide bet. So if you got like a 3 or a 4 leg parlay, you can hedge out of it by taking the opposite side of the last leg of your parlay. In this case, you might be getting +400 on the fight goes to decision, you know, so you could always hedge out. So it's nice. It's a great parlay piece. The fight doesn't go to decision, in my opinion. And there's a couple other fights on this card that you could pretty much guarantee aren't going the distance. So you could parlay it with a couple other violence bets, particularly the Tafa Hunsucker bet you were talking about. You know, I mean, it's a great parlay piece. You know, you just don't want to be caught laying 4.5 units to win just like 1 unit or a little over 1 unit. It's hard to do that. You got to be right. Just you have to be 100% sure, and you can't ever be that in MMA.
100%. Like we just saw, like Nunez lost last week, and people are still talking about it in the chat. And I think people are going to continue to talk about it. But Jack's saying, I got the under 2.5 rounds at +115 when it opened. Yep, I saw that as well, and I passed like an idiot. and I also saw the under 3.5 rounds at -120. I passed. I took a nap. I woke back up and it was gone like that. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same thing, Jack. I'm thinking about, maybe not the under 2.5. I think you got a phenomenal price. It's now -150, but I'm kind of thinking the alternative, like under 3.5 rounds, or maybe like the fight won't start round 5. I bet the fight won't start round 5 in last week's main event at -260 for Oliveira Poirier. If I can get like fight won't start round 5, anything better than like -300, I think that's something I'm going to be looking to hammer there. But we have Daukaus wins by KO +125. Lewis wins by KO +160. I actually think there's probably value on that Lewis KO line because, like you said, he's +119. I think the KO prop should be like right around there. Daukaus by submission +900. Lewis by submission +3,300. Daukaus inside the distance +110. Lewis inside the distance +155. Daukaus by decision +550. Lewis by decision +700. Any of those sticking out to you, Easy?
Sorry. Yeah, just the Lewis by KO +160 and the Daukaus by KO +125, I think are both great ways. Um, since neither one of these guys is really much of a submission artist, you could kind of play both of those and you might get a little bit better of a return than you would if you just straight bet the fight doesn't go to decision, or you could bet the fight ends by KO. The fight ends by KO could be a cheeky little bet available on FanDuel, but I don't think that one is out yet. So, in terms of, yeah, it's the knockout props. It's definitely the knockout props, and I love the fight doesn't go as a parlay piece.
Yeah, and usually DraftKings and FanDuel, they get out a prop that I like to look at sometimes. The fight ends by KO could be interesting as well.
That's right. That's what I just said, man. That would be a fantastic bet. You got to love that one because these guys are, let me just go back to these numbers real quick here. Daukaus has finished 92% of his pro wins by knockout, 11 of 12. And Derek Lewis has finished 20 of his 25 career wins by knockout. So, yeah, there are 31 combined knockout wins between these two gentlemen in 37 fights. So yeah, the fight ends by KO feels like a good way to get maybe a better line than what you're going to get on fight doesn't go to decision.
Oh yeah, for sure. Vu saying best bet is the old Uncle Weezy special draw. What do you think about a draw here?
Yeah, I love the draw when I have no clue who's going to win a fight. That's Uncle Weezy's coward's way out of saying just bet the draw. That way I can't be on record saying I like one fighter or the other. But in this one, man, I'm not taking the coward's way out. I'm going to confidently say that this fight doesn't go to decision. And if I'm wrong, I'll be wrong with a ton of other people.
Sounds good. I don't think anybody is going to predict this to go to decision here. Lewis has never been to decision in a 5-round fight, but he has seen a 4th round before. I think he's seen maybe 2 4th rounds, right?
I know in the Abdurakhimov fight, and then I forget where the Gane fight, was that a 3rd round knockout or a 4th round knockout?
The Gane was late 3rd.
Late 3rd. Okay, so two fights in the 4th round. Shamil and Hunt. Yeah, he went 4 rounds of Hunt too. So yeah, and then the losses for I forgot to mention the losses for Derek Lewis. This is the quality of opposition that he's losing to. Maybe future title holder Cyril Gane, former title holder Dos Santos, former title holder Cormier, a guy who hits like a truck in Mark Hunt, and then Sean Jordan and Matt Mitrione back in 2015 and 2014, ancient history. So, yeah, the guys who have been beating Derek Lewis after 2016 have been absolute studs.
Yeah, for sure. I like Daukaus KO round 1 at +400. All of Daukaus' UFC wins would be 1st-round KOs if they weren't for bad fishing in the last bout. Yeah, I will say if Daukaus comes into this fight and fights like he normally does, this could very well finish in the 1st round. But if he does come in here and change up his style a little bit because it is Derek Lewis standing in front of him, that's when I could see it standing. So I don't know how Daukaus is going to approach this fight. If I wish I did know, it'd make this a lot easier. But I think Daukaus could potentially come in here and fight like he usually does. And at that point, I think it probably does finish early. So, Uncle Weezy, what is your final prediction for this fight? Final thoughts, and then what is your favorite bet for this fight?
I'm going to go I'm going to go with Chris Daukaus to win this fight. I think maybe by 2nd round knockout. My favorite bet would be as a parlay piece, a way to end up a cheeky parlay on the night would be the fight doesn't go to decision. But I would say Chris Daukaus by KO at +120. would probably be the. Oh, I'm sorry, where was it?
125.
125. Okay, yeah. So that would probably be my favorite way to play this thing. But I mean, the fight doesn't go is the best way to play both sides. You know what? No. Fight ends by KO. When that comes out, that'll be my best bet for this fight because I think you'll get a lot more value than fight doesn't go to decision. And I mean, if either of these guys subs the other one, I mean, I'm quitting. I'm done. This will be my last show ever if either one of these guys subs the other. So yeah, that would be the best bet. The best bet is the fight ends by KO.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, maybe we'll get like a decent line on that because we know that Daukaus is a black belt, but once you look into it, he has literally no subs. The only sub is a tap to punches, and I don't think Lewis. I mean, maybe he does tap to punches. I don't know, but I don't think so. And then Lewis isn't submitting anybody. I think Lewis has one submission in his career way back in the day. So yeah, I'm with you. Looks like we're seeing it about the same. I like Daukaus here. I do think he should be a favorite. I think he's going to definitely be the minute winner, but as we all know, it only takes one shot. So I'm a little bit wary about that, but I'm just going to play both sides here and take either the fight doesn't go, like the fight won't start round 5, the under 4.5, the under 3.5, and then the fight ends by KO. I'm going to be looking at one of those, but I know for sure I'm going to be playing violence in this fight. I think someone goes to sleep. I think if this does get extended, I think it's going to favor Lewis, but I don't know. We have not seen Daukaus extended in a long time. I'm curious to see if it does get extended, but I think this probably does end within the first couple rounds. Give me Daukaus by KO. I think he finishes Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, when he gets hit, he really doesn't look like he likes it. So I think Daukaus is going to put him out probably within the first couple rounds there. But as far as a bet, I'm looking at covering both sides with a violence prop. But yeah, that is about it. Wheezy, let the people know where they can find you, what you have going on throughout the week. I know you're going on the Die Hard MMA podcast in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I usually, this is fun, but I like to talk about mixed martial arts on YouTube for at least 3 hours a day. So yeah, you can catch me in like 12 minutes, or I'm sorry, in 17 minutes on Pub Sports Radio for the Die Hard MMA podcast with my guy Clint. Tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Central Time, you can catch me. Yeah, that'll be, yeah, today is Monday. God damn, it's been a long weekend. Tomorrow night, Just the Tip, 10 p.m. full card breakdown for UFC Vegas 45, all 14 fights on my channel. You can also catch me on Pub Sports Radio again tomorrow for the DraftKings show. And you can catch me on Chronic Combat Conversations on Wednesday night, making my debut there. So it's going to be a very busy week for me, but I appreciate all you guys hanging out with us and breaking down this main event.
For sure. Cannot wait to watch the Die Hard pod in about 15 minutes. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. My full card breakdown and prediction video will be out, hoping sometime tomorrow. If not, on Wednesday. I'll be on Pub Sports Radio tomorrow with Wheezy, AJ, and Luke doing the DraftKings show. And I'll be back on Friday going live, looking to do like a special Friday live stream since it is going to be the last card of the year. Trying to get a couple guys on Friday. Should be a fun show there. So that's about it, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Voodoo, Jack Attack, Daz in there as well. I saw Chronic in there as well earlier. Who else we got in here? Paul, thank you for hanging out as well. All you guys, smash the like button on your way out. Bon Kui Ben, 1D Ammo. Shout out to all you guys. Leave a like on your way out, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon. Good luck for UFC Vegas 45.